Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I work in tech and make good money. Not bragging, just setting the scene. I don't mind sharing what I have with friends. My parents taught me that real friendship means being there for each other, so I never thought twice about helping out people I cared about. I met my so-called best friend in college. We bonded over late-night study sessions and shared dreams about our careers. After graduation, we stayed close even though we ended up in different cities. She struggled to find stable work for a while, jumping between part-time jobs and internships that barely paid her rent. During those tough years, I was always there. When her phone died and she couldn't afford a replacement, I let her use my old one. When she needed help studying for certification exams, I spent weekends on video calls walking her through practice problems. I even sent her money a few times when she couldn't make rent, telling her not to worry about paying me back. The streaming subscriptions thing started small. She mentioned she couldn't afford Netflix anymore, so I shared my password. No big deal, right? Then she asked about my Amazon Prime account because she wanted to watch some show. Fine. Then came Disney Plus, then Spotify Premium. I had all these subscriptions anyway, and what's the point of having them if I can't share with a friend? She never offered to split the costs. Not once. But I told myself that's not what friendship is about. She was struggling, I was doing well, and this was just my way of showing I cared. Things started bothering me when she'd only reach out when she needed something. Her texts always followed the same pattern. She'd start by asking how I was doing, then quickly shift to asking for some favor. Sometimes it was about needing the login for a new streaming service I had mentioned. Other times she'd ask me to help her figure out how to transfer data when her phone died, or if I could order something on Amazon and ship it to her place since she didn't have Prime. But I ignored the red flags because I thought that's what good friends do. Then my dad got really sick, cancer. The whole family was falling apart, and I was trying to balance work, hospital visits, and keeping everyone together. I was barely sleeping, crying in bathroom stalls between meetings, and desperately needed someone to talk to. I called her one evening after a particularly rough day at the hospital. I told her I really needed to talk to someone because things with my dad were getting worse and I wasn't handling it well. She said that was terrible, but she was super busy right now and asked if we could catch up later. Later never came. I tried again a few days later. I explained that I knew she was busy, but I was really struggling and just needed someone to listen for a few minutes. Her response floored me. She told me I was always finding ways to be unhappy and maybe I should try being more positive. That hit me like a slap. Here I was, dealing with my father's cancer, and she thought I was just choosing to be negative. I realized she had never been there for me during any difficult time. Our entire friendship was just me giving and her taking. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I quietly started my petty revenge. First, I changed my Netflix password. Within hours, my phone buzzed with a message from her saying Netflix wasn't working and asking if I had changed the password. I told her I had to update it for security reasons and sent her the new password. I waited for her to log in, then logged her out from my account settings. The next day, the same thing happened. She messaged me saying Netflix had logged her out again and that it was so weird. I agreed that it was strange and sent her the password again. Log in, log out, repeat. By the third day, she was getting frustrated. She complained that it was so annoying how Netflix kept kicking her out and asked if my account was having issues. I told her that was strange and suggested she try the mobile app instead. She tried everything. Different devices, different browsers, even asking me to send her the one-time password codes when she attempted to reset the login herself. Like the good friend I had always been, I never refused to help. I'd send her the code, she'd log in, and within minutes, I'd boot her out again. For 2 weeks, this dance continued. She'd message me multiple times a day about the Netflix issues. I'd play innocent and helpful, sending her new passwords and verification codes, all while logging her out seconds after she gained access. She told me she didn't understand what was happening. She'd log in and then it would say someone else was using the account. She asked if I was watching Netflix all day. I replied that it was so strange and that I barely had time to watch anything these days with everything going on. The frustration in her messages was obvious. She tried contacting Netflix support, convinced there was a technical problem. She even suggested I call them to fix my account. She said the Netflix problem was driving her crazy and asked if I could please call them and tell them my account was broken. I told her I'd look into it when I had time, but I never did. I was too busy dealing with real problems, like my father's treatment and my own emotional health. The final straw came when she messaged me late one night. She said she was so stressed about this Netflix thing and that it was really affecting her mood. She asked why I couldn't just fix this already. She was stressed about not being able to watch free Netflix while I was watching my father waste away in a hospital bed. The audacity was breathtaking. That's when I decided to end the charade. I told her it was funny that she said Netflix problems were stressing her out and affecting her mood, but when I told her my dad's cancer was affecting my mood, she said I was choosing to be unhappy. She said that was completely different. I agreed that it was different. I explained that my problems were real, while hers were just her being entitled to something that was never hers to begin with. She asked what I meant. I told her I had been logging her out on purpose every single time for 2 weeks. She asked if I was being serious. I said I was dead serious. I explained that I wanted her to know why I did it. I told her I realized our entire friendship had been her taking advantage of my generosity while giving nothing back, not even basic emotional support when I needed it most. She protested that wasn't fair and claimed she had been a good friend to me. I challenged her to name one time she had been there for me when I needed help. She couldn't answer that because there wasn't an answer. I told her I was done being her personal ATM and tech support. I said she should find her own Netflix account, and while she was at it, find some new friends to mooch off of. I blocked her on everything before she could respond, changed all my passwords, removed her from every streaming service, and felt lighter than I had in months. My dad's treatment went well. Thankfully, he's in remission now. Through his recovery, I learned who my real friends were, the ones who showed up with food, who sat with me in waiting rooms, who checked in without needing anything in return. I've been saving up cash for a down payment on a house, keeping it in my bedroom closet in a small safe. I know it sounds old-fashioned, but I didn't trust banks with that much money after my previous bad experience with frozen accounts. I had exactly $10,000 saved up, all in cash. My friend Karen and I had known each other since college. We weren't super close, but we kept in touch over the years. She was the type of person who always seemed to have drama in her life, but I figured everyone goes through rough patches. 3 weeks ago, Karen called me, crying. She told me she was in a really bad situation because her boyfriend had kicked her out of his apartment. She said she had nowhere to go and was completely broke. She asked if she could crash on my couch for just a few days and promised it wouldn't be long. I felt bad for her. I had a decent-sized apartment with a comfortable couch, and helping a friend seemed like the right thing to do. I told her she could stay as long as she needed to get back on her feet. She thanked me over and over, saying I was a lifesaver. She said she'd be there that night if it was okay. She showed up that evening with 2 suitcases and a sob story about how her boyfriend was controlling and how she needed to start over. I made her dinner and we caught up. She seemed genuinely grateful and promised she'd start looking for work immediately. The first few days went fine. Karen was respectful, cleaned up after herself, and seemed to be actively job hunting. She'd leave early in the morning and come back in the evening, telling me about interviews and applications she'd submitted. But then things started feeling off. I'd come home from meetings with clients and find her just sitting on my couch watching TV. When I asked about job hunting, she'd get defensive and say it was harder than I thought to find work in this economy. She insisted she was trying her best. I told her I was just checking in and that she should take her time. I also noticed she was asking weird questions about my work and finances. She'd comment that business must be really good for me to afford such a nice place. When I said I did okay, she'd push further and say I must make a lot more than she thought because this apartment wasn't cheap. I started feeling uncomfortable with how interested she was in my money situation but I tried to brush it off. Maybe she was just curious or feeling insecure about her own financial problems. About 2 weeks into her stay, I had to go out of town for a client meeting that would keep me overnight. I told Karen I'd be back the next evening and that she should help herself to anything in the fridge. She thanked me again for everything and said I was such a good friend. I'd recently installed a small security camera in my bedroom. It looked like a teddy bear sitting on my dresser, and I'd bought it after there had been some break-ins in my neighborhood. I hadn't mentioned it to Karen because it honestly slipped my mind. When I got back from my trip, Karen was acting strange. She seemed nervous and kept avoiding eye contact. When I asked how her day was, she just said it was fine and that she'd been relaxing because job hunting was exhausting. Something felt wrong, but I put my finger on it. The next morning I went to my closet to add some cash to my savings, and my heart stopped. The safe was open, and all my money was gone. I immediately checked the footage from my teddy bear camera. What I saw made my blood boil. The video clearly showed Karen entering my bedroom while I was out of town. She spent almost an hour going through my things, opening drawers, and looking in my closet. When she found the safe, she tried different combinations until she got it open. The camera caught her counting the money and stuffing it into her purse. I was shaking with anger, but I forced myself to stay calm. I made copies of the video and called the police before confronting her. When Karen came back that afternoon, I was waiting for her. I told her we needed to talk. She asked what was up and I explained that $10,000 was missing from my bedroom and that she was the only person who'd been here. Her face went white, but she tried to play innocent. She insisted she would never steal from me and acted shocked by the accusation. I told her I had her on camera. I showed her the video on my laptop. She watched herself break into my safe and steal my money. Her face went from white to red. Instead of apologizing, she got angry and accused me of spying on her. She said that was messed up. I told her that stealing $10,000 from me was what was messed up. She tried to defend herself by saying she was desperate and was going to pay me back when she got a job. I asked her when that would be since she hadn't even been looking for work. She insisted she had been looking and that I didn't understand how hard things were for her. I asked if things were hard enough to steal from someone who was helping her. The police arrived 20 minutes later. I showed them the video evidence and they arrested Karen on the spot. She started crying and begging me not to do this. She kept saying I was her friend and that she'd pay me back. She promised she would make it right. I told her she'd had the chance to be honest with me, but chose to steal instead. The officer told her she was under arrest for theft over $5,000, which was a felony. When they put her in handcuffs, Karen was still trying to manipulate the situation. She cried that this was going to ruin her life and asked how I could do this to a friend. I told her she had done this to herself. The trial was straightforward. The video evidence was clear, and Karen's lawyer advised her to take a plea deal. She was sentenced to 2 years in prison and ordered to pay me back the full amount plus court costs. A few months later, I got a letter from her in prison. She was still trying to play the victim, saying I'd overreacted and that real friends would have worked things out privately. I threw the letter away without finishing it. I used the money I eventually got back as restitution for exactly what I'd planned, a down payment on my house. Today started like any other day. I had gotten to work early to finish up some code before a big presentation to our client. The morning went well, and I was feeling pretty good about the demo we were going to give. Around lunchtime, I decided to head down to the lobby to grab some food from the sandwich shop across the street. Nothing fancy, just my usual routine. I was standing in front of the elevator bank on the 15th floor, checking my phone while waiting. The building can get pretty busy during lunch hours, but it wasn't too crowded at that moment. When I heard the ding and saw the doors opening, I looked up from my phone and stepped forward. The elevator was empty, and there was no one directly in front of me that I could see, so I walked right in. That's when I heard the voice behind me. A woman in her 40s, dressed in a business suit, told me that she was there first. She had this look on her face like I had just committed some terrible crime. I turned around and saw her standing next to an elderly couple. I apologized and explained that I didn't see her there. I told her there was plenty of room for everyone, though. I genuinely hadn't noticed them. I was focused on my phone and just stepped in when the doors opened. It seemed like a simple misunderstanding that could be cleared up quickly, but she said it was incredibly rude and that I had seen them standing there and pushed right past them. I told her again that I really didn't see them and apologized if it seemed that way. The elderly couple got on the elevator with her, but she kept going. She started going on about how people like me have no manners whatsoever. She said this was exactly what was wrong with society today, and that I had no respect for anyone else. I pressed the button for the lobby and tried to ignore her, but she wasn't stopping. She continued by saying she bet my parents never taught me basic courtesy. She called it disgraceful how some people behave in public. The elevator was moving slowly and we were only on the 12th floor. I could feel my face getting hot. I'm not usually one to get into confrontations, but she was really laying it on thick. She then complained that I was just going to stand there and say nothing. She called it typical and said I had no accountability whatsoever. I looked at the elderly couple, hoping maybe they would say something to calm her down, but they just stood there quietly. The man was looking at the floor, and the woman was staring straight ahead. I started to wonder if they were related to her or if they were just as uncomfortable as I was. She kept going about how this was the problem with young people today. She said we had no respect, no manners, just selfish behavior everywhere you look. We hit the 8th floor and I realized I couldn't take much more of this. My jaw was clenched and I was trying to keep my cool, but she was really pushing it. She then said she supposed I thought I was entitled to do whatever I wanted without considering how it affects other people. That's when I finally lost it a little bit. I told her to keep her comments to herself and reminded her that I had already apologized for what was clearly an honest mistake. The elevator went dead silent. Karen's mouth dropped open like she couldn't believe I had spoken up. The elderly couple both turned to look at me and I could see disapproval in their eyes. The woman shook her head slightly and whispered something to Karen that I couldn't quite hear. She then said she never heard such a thing and asked how I dared to raise my voice at her. I explained that she had been lecturing me for the past 5 minutes about something that was clearly an accident and that I had already said I was sorry. She said that was no excuse for my behavior and that I should be ashamed of myself. The elevator finally reached the lobby and the doors opened. The elderly couple got off first, followed by Karen, who turned back to look at me one more time. She said some people just have no class. I stayed in the elevator for a moment after they left, trying to process what had just happened. Part of me felt bad for raising my voice, especially in front of the elderly couple. But another part of me was still angry about being berated for what was obviously an innocent mistake. I finally got off and headed toward the sandwich shop, but I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe I had handled it wrong. The way the elderly couple looked at me made me wonder if they thought I was some kind of aggressive person who had no respect for others. When I was walking across the street, I saw Karen through the window of a coffee shop, animatedly talking to the elderly couple. She was gesturing wildly, and I could only imagine what she was saying about me. The old man was nodding along, and the woman was shaking her head in what looked like agreement. I got my sandwich and headed back to the building, hoping I wouldn't run into them again. When I got to the elevator bank, I saw Karen standing there with the couple, still talking. When she saw me, she stopped mid-sentence and gave me a look that was ice cold. This time I waited for the next elevator. Back at my desk, I couldn't concentrate on my work. I kept thinking about the whole situation and whether I had been in the wrong. Sure, maybe I could have been more aware of my surroundings, but her reaction seemed way over the top for such a minor incident. A few hours later, I was heading home and dreading another potential elevator encounter. When luck would have it, the elevator was empty when it arrived. I got in and pressed the button for the lobby, but just when the doors were about to close, I heard familiar voices. Karen shouted for someone to hold the elevator. The doors opened again, and there she was, this time with a different elderly woman and a security guard from the building. She pointed at me and told the security guard that I was the one who had been incredibly rude to her and some elderly people earlier today. The security guard asked me to step off the elevator, and I asked what was going on. She explained that I had pushed past them to get on the elevator and then yelled at her when she tried to address my behavior. I told them that wasn't what happened at all. I said I had accidentally gotten on before I noticed they were there, that I had apologized, and that she had spent 5 minutes insulting me. The security guard asked her if I had threatened her or touched her in any way. She admitted that I hadn't, but claimed I was very aggressive and made her feel unsafe. The security guard then asked the elderly woman with her if she had witnessed this. The elderly woman looked confused and said she wasn't there earlier. She explained that Karen had just told her about it. I could see the security guard's expression change when he realized what was happening. He asked Karen if she was filing a complaint based on second-hand information. She insisted that I was completely out of line and told him to ask anyone who was there. I told him that the people who were actually there weren't present right now, but that I was happy to explain what really happened. I told the security guard my version of events, making sure to emphasize that I had apologized immediately and that she had continued to berate me for several minutes afterward. The security guard said this sounded like a misunderstanding that got blown out of proportion. He told Karen he wasn't seeing any grounds for a formal complaint. Karen started arguing with the security guard about how the building needed to take these matters more seriously. But it was clear that he wasn't buying her story, especially since her only witness wasn't actually a witness at all. When we finally got in the elevator, Karen was silent for the entire ride down. When we reached the lobby, she walked off without saying another word, leaving the confused elderly woman to follow behind her. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.